This mind that we discover in our meditation is a very beautiful mind, and for some of us it may be the only time today that we've had a little bit of peace and stillness in our mind. We're so conditioned to be busy, active all the time, and the mind that we have is, when we sit, also a mind of busyness and activity. And sometimes we're surprised to see this link between our daily activity and our meditation practice. But when you think about it, it's pretty obvious. And so one of the things that I try to teach is to be aware of how the mind is, and to be aware of the way that we can live our life in a way that helps us to have a peaceful, still mind when it comes to sitting. So there's always a link between the life that we're leading outside and the practice of our meditation. And today I want to talk about that link, maybe in relation to, I guess, slightly inspired by what we were talking about at the beginning there, about the recent American election. And I want to start us to think about how holding on, how not letting go can cause us a lot of unhappiness. In particular, I'm thinking about this idea of a grudge or some resentment, some ill will. And I'm thinking about this because of the election, and just thinking how divided America is. There's a lot of stuff has gone down, a lot of stuff has happened, and even us here, so far away on the other side of the world, we've been a little bit on edge, wondering what's going to happen, worried about what's going to happen, and we've been perhaps developing some resentment towards certain politicians, and maybe even the people who have voted for that certain politician. And when you look at the results of that election, there's not much between the Democrats and the Republicans. And so there's a divided country. And this is something which they'll have to obviously work to overcome. And so there's going to have to be some forgiveness, and there's going to have to be some reconciliation. And although we are not ourselves a country, we also have our internal conflicts within ourselves, things about ourselves that cause us distress, things about ourselves that we don't like, aspects of ourselves that are in opposition to other parts of ourselves. And of course, in our own lives, we have opponents. We have people who have hurt us. We have people who we don't like. And we have problem people, irritating people. And it's easy for us to wish that they just weren't there, to wish them away, and to block them from our lives. But experience has shown that this is not going to happen. And for many of us, the conflicts in our life, the problem people, are actually important parts of our life. And often they're very good parts of our lives. And so we need some sort of strategies to work with the kind of mind that happens when we have grudge, the kind of mind that happens when we have resentment. And so that's why tonight I gave that meditation, which is a very spacious meditation, a meditation that encourages the mind to become open, expansive, so that you can feel what it's like to have a mind that isn't holding on, that isn't tight from the kind of mind that happens when we have grudge or resentment. So if you think about something that's happened in your life, something that kind of comes up from time to time in your practice, because it always does, doesn't it? Something comes up, someone has hurt you, that job treated you really badly, people are problems, that woman in the shop, she really got in your way, the bus driver was rude. All these things start to pop up in the mind. And it's important for us to identify what happens in our mind when these things appear. So you probably know with a mind that has some resentment or some grudge, there's an underlying issue, a reason that it's there. And so maybe at the kernel of this feeling is a sense of being hurt, a sense of injustice, some anger, some irritation, some resentment. And that might be buried very, very deep down in us. And then wrapped around that kernel of hurt and pain, there'll be a feeling of ill will, a feeling of aversion, not wanting, not liking. Maybe it can be a very strong emotion, hating, wanting to cause harm to that person. When we experience a mind like this, it can be very unpleasant inside our mind. And you see what happens, the mind becomes very tight, very tense. When this thought, this idea, this memory comes up, the mind becomes very tight, very tense. And the body also becomes tight and tense. The mind almost slams a door between you and that memory, that person. The defenses come up and all sorts of trains of thought will come from that. You might recollect the hurt, the pain, the occasion that led to it. Or you might just be left with the memory lingering of a general feeling of resentment, unease, unhappiness. Or you might become the judge and jury and arraign them in your mind, judging them, telling them what you do to them, imagining a scenario where they were punished. And this is the mind that we have when we have a sense of grudge, resentment. And this is the mind that other people in our life might have towards us. Perhaps we have done something to hurt. Perhaps we have said some unkind words, have done something that bothers another person. And so this is a starting point for us to rebuild a spacious mind. So firstly, we can let go of some judgment, just a little bit in our own mind towards others. We can let go of some of that anger that we've been holding on to. We can lessen the tsunami of feelings that flood the mind, agitate us, causing tension, triggering all those hormones in the body, releasing more stress within us. We can create a little bit of a buffer in our mind, a moat, to protect ourselves, we create a little bit of space. And so that mind that is spacious and open is very precious to us, because if we can cultivate that mind, if we can develop it, if we can maintain it, then those things like resentment, hurt, pain, when they come into the mind, they don't reverberate so strongly. We're practicing letting go. We don't have to hold on. We're getting better every time we practice at releasing. So this is an important skill to develop. This is something that we can do in our meditation. It's something that we can do outside of our meditation. But this is a practice, and we get better at it as we go along. One of the images that the Buddha uses to describe a kind of mind that is like this is like someone who's at the side of the river Ganges. Big, huge river, so vast, kilometers across, and goes on forever, all the way to the horizon, it seems. And along comes a person with a torch, a grass torch, a flame, and they want to set the Ganges River on fire. But of course, the river is so wide and so wet. When they put the torch into the river, it's very quickly extinguished. And so this is the kind of spaciousness that we have in our mind that we can develop through meditation. When an irritation or a memory, a thought, an idea, a past pain, some trauma comes into the mind, if it's small and very contained, then that's going to have an impact. But when we have a vast mind, a mind that's open, spacious, then there's so much space that it just doesn't affect. Just like that torch is quickly extinguished. Or another image the Buddha uses is the paint drawn in the air. There's nothing for that paint to cling to. There's nothing for that paint to get stuck on. It just slides off the brush, drips straight onto the ground without getting stuck, like Teflon. And so we gradually develop a mind that is like this, that is able to let go, that allows things to slide off. And again, it's that practice of not holding on, of letting go. And it's easy to say, and it's more challenging to do, so I do understand that. But it is that practice. And that's why I teach this practice by releasing the tension in the body first. We can see, it is possible just by inclining my mind in this direction of wanting to release that tension, of acknowledging the relaxation response that comes, and understanding how heavy that stress, how heavy that tension was, how unsatisfactory that tightness is, how much suffering is caught up in bodily tension. And then seeing how easy it is when the mind is inclined towards relaxation, just reminded through verbal prompts, releasing, letting go, relaxing, how quickly the body learns, this feels good. This is the direction of comfort, of ease. And then when it comes to the mind, the same thing. We've been holding on to tension. We've been holding on to tightness. And then letting go, releasing, we see the mind become peaceful and calm. When resentment and grudge appears in the mind, that tension returns, that tightness builds up. but we can let it go, relaxing, releasing, softening. And it may take many attempts to let go, many attempts to release. But eventually we become adept at this practice. Eventually it becomes second nature. We see with wisdom that holding on is suffering. And as I said at the beginning, we don't need to push, we don't need to shove that memory, that feeling away. We just need to not hang on to it. We don't have to crave a feeling of freedom from that memory, freedom from that emotion, freedom from that feeling. We don't have to wish that it was different. We just have to see with wisdom that that is suffering. And a mind that sees that is more inclined to let it go. Sometimes the mind, when it sees that it's suffering, the wisdom kicks in all by itself. And as we train the mind in this direction over and over again, it becomes much easier just to let go. And eventually, when those things come into the mind, they no longer obsess the mind, they no longer are sticky. The mind doesn't get stuck on this thought, this idea. It can let go. It can happen very quickly. Almost as soon as this thing arises, you're already letting go. So this is why I encourage this development of this practice. So resentment and grudge is something that will also appear outside of our mind in our lives, and we need some strategies to cope with that too. And I think with some of you in the group I've shared a series of images that the Buddha used to talk about removing resentment, and you've probably already forgotten them, so I'll go over them again because they're very useful images. And the first one is an image of a rag on the street. And this rag is a dirty rag. But part of that rag is clean. And so someone who wants a rag, like a monk like me, who has to wear rag robes to as part of our practice, we use patches of material. If you're going around, you see a rag on the street, you think, oh, that looks like a good rag. Maybe I'll take that rag with me. But you don't want to take the dirty bit. You just want to take the good bit. And so you just tear that fabric. You leave behind the part that is dirty and you take the part that is good. And so in this way, when it comes to people in our lives who cause us some pain, cause us some resentment, who we have a grudge towards, we can look at some of their good qualities, remember their good qualities, and those bad qualities, those irritations, those words that they've said, those problems that have caused us, in this moment we can let them go. We can release it. Instead of focusing on them, we just focus on those good qualities that they have. Everyone has some good qualities. Everyone has a good quality. Everyone has some redeeming features. And so in this way, we're inclining the mind away from that heavy, negative, uncomfortable tension that appears, and towards something a little bit lighter, a little bit more kind, more positive feeling in our own heart that helps. And in the same way, the Buddha said, imagine you're hot and you're thirsty and you want to go and bathe in a pond, but it's covered in moss and slime, pond slime. So what do? You're so hot, you're thirsty, you just want to cool down. And this is what it's like inside our minds quite often when we have this tension and tightness. It feels hot. We're agitated. We are boiling on the inside. You feel the heat come into the mind, the discomfort. We want to cool down. And so we want to go into that cool pond. But there's moss and slime on the surface. So what do? You just part that moss with your hands, revealing the cool, clean water underneath. And this moss, of course, is a metaphor, a simile for those bad qualities that we see in others that obscure their good qualities. And so we want to just scoop that aside and plunge into the cool pool. Another image the Buddha used is the image of a cow's hoof print. Tiny amount of water in it. And you're hot and thirsty. You need to drink. You've got to get down on your hands and knees and suck up that little bit of water in that cow's hoof print. And in the same way, there's so many people in this world, almost as if they have no redeeming qualities. But we're the ones here who are suffering. We're hot, thirsty, we need to drink. And so we get down on our hands and knees, we suck up that water, we suck up that person's good qualities. Not for their benefit, but for ours, so that our mind can remain untroubled. Our mind can cool down. And then the Buddha uses this image of a traveller lost in the desert, and they're sick, they're injured, they're a long way from any hope, any help, any support, they're a long way from any villages. They're suffering. And when we see them, we can't help them maybe. We don't know how to help them. We don't have anything to give them. We see them off in the distance perhaps. But we have a heart that is full of compassion, full of kindness, and says, may they become well. May they find some security, some safety, some peace. May they get better. And this is a mind which is a lot larger than a mind that is angry, resentful, hateful, spiteful, irritated. It's a mind that looks on a much larger level, a human level, seeing them as a being who is suffering, causing themselves pain, causing other people suffering too, perhaps. But this person is suffering, and the response that we should have to a suffering being is kindness, compassion, gentleness, love. And this mind is beautiful. This mind is spacious and large. This mind can accommodate and absorb all of those beings who cause problems in our lives. This kind of mind is vast, like the Ganges, is broad and deep and cool. And those irritating people, they can't take away that coolness. They can't take away that vast spaciousness. And so this is how we can develop a mind, that is able to see good qualities in people, and where there are no good qualities, to have some kindness and compassion. And the last image that the Buddha uses, again, it's a very cool image of a beautiful a beautiful glade, a sheltered pond in the forest, and this kind of person doesn't have any bad qualities. They've got good qualities. They're a good person. We love them. And yet, somehow in our mind, there's some resentment, some irritation that's popped up. Maybe it's just our stuff, but we blame them. And if this is a good person who has good qualities that we love, then we want to bathe in that water, go into that cool pond, and stay there, and get out and bask in their shade, and just be there with them. And so this is a kind of person, you have a teacher perhaps, or a friend who's got many good qualities, or you have maybe someone like the Buddha, but from time to time that resentment which is in us comes up. And so the idea here is to just really understand their good qualities, see their good qualities, and bathe in them and stay with those good qualities. The reason for this image is because that resentment, that irritation, it actually doesn't belong outside of ourselves. It's something that is inside ourselves. That resentment, that irritation, that hatred, that ill will is in our mind. And outside, all those objects, all those people, all those countries, all those politicians, our resentment to them starts in our heart. And we know this from experience because the people that we experience resentment towards change all the time. You have a friend who you love and adore. They do something that annoys you, and suddenly they're an object of your resentment. What's changed? Something has changed inside your heart. Or you have a favourite character in a TV show, and then there's a plot twist, something happens, and then your attitude towards them changes. It's happened inside you. And what's happening is we're starting to get stuck on a particular moment in time, a particular thing that has happened, and that door has been closed. We've shut the door on that person, and we've fixed them as a person to have resentment towards, a person who is bad, someone who is a problem. But this, of course, is not the full story. This is not the full person. This is not entirely true. And in the same way that we see that in others, we can also imagine for ourselves that, yes, sure, we've done things to hurt others, but we're not only defined by that thing. We would hate for other people to fix us, to solidify that one thing that we did that one time, and to hold that as us, as a definition of us, a bad person, a hurtful person, someone to hate. That's not how we want to be seen. And so why do we do that to others? And when we have this mind that is open and spacious, a mind that is forgiving, a mind that is full of love, when we have that mind, there's no difference between us and them. There's no difference between them and other beings. There's no difference between friends and foe. There's just people, beings. And this is something I heard Joe Biden say this morning. He said, there's no Democrats and Republicans, there's no enemy, there's just Americans. And there's not just Americans, there's just people of the world. There's just beings in space. This broadness of mind conquers divisions. It removes those artificial boundaries, those walls that we put up to divide ourselves from others, to divide people into categories of good people, friends, bad people, enemies, people we don't like, people of different political persuasion, people of different whatever it may be. These divisions, these boundaries, these are small minds, little minds, segmented, fractured. But a mind of love, mind of kindness, compassion, these erase those boundaries. They're not divisible. They cannot be piecemealed. They cannot be fractured. Can't divide it, portion it out. So that's what these are called, boundless mind states. Boundless because they go across divisions, across boundaries. And this is the kind of mind that the Buddha encouraged us to develop. And of course that's an ideal. It's much easier to practice it on the cushion, slowly developing that mind. Much harder to deal in the real world with all the busyness and interactions that we have with others. But the more we practice this mind state, the more we develop that boundless mind, an open heart, a forgiving mind, a forgiving heart, a mind that doesn't hold on to grudge, doesn't hold on to resentment. The more we develop that mind in our meditation, the more we can bring that mind into our life. The more we can smooth the balm over problematic work relationships, problematic intimate relations, family problems. The more we can be a source of love and kindness in a world so divided. And so this is something that we can develop. This is something that the Buddha said we should develop. Something that all spiritual traditions have gotten behind. This idea that we can have a mind of love. And so there's going to have to be a process for us of forgiveness. And that is that letting go. The resentment, the grudge is holding on. Visiting over and over again a past wrong. And who's suffering in that moment? Is it the person who did it to you? Or is it you that's suffering? When we remember these things in the past, we do so because of the amount of pain that was caused. There's got to be some sort of perhaps evolutionary principle at work here. You know, we got hurt. There's some pain that was real. It wasn't just. It wasn't right. That's why it's reverberating even now. And of course, you know, if you experience some pain as an animal or as a hunter-gatherer somewhere, then you learn not to go back to that. You learn that that place is bad. You want to stay away. And yet, in the privacy of our mind, for some reason, this trait has become triggered and repeats and reverberates, echoes with this memory of the past. And so this is what we can let go of. We can't let go of the actual experience that happened. We couldn't control that. It's already happened. It's already in the past. There's nothing that we can do. But we can have some influence over those reverberations by understanding with wisdom that holding on to them is what causes us more pain, and that letting go is what brings some freedom from that pain. And I don't mean to trivialize or minimize any real pain and suffering that you have in your life that has been caused by others. Of course that's real. Of course it hurt. I don't mean to say that there are things that we should not have a problem with in this world. Things like abuse or exploitation or cruelty or harm. Those things are bad. That's why those things hurt us. And I'm not saying that we should pretend those things aren't there, or that we should not seek justice, that we should not say no to these things. I'm just saying that wherever possible, we should try to have some freedom from that pain, because it has caused us so much suffering. And we don't want suffering in our life. We want to be free from that suffering. And although there will be some justice perhaps from a court, or some justice from the HR team at work, or someone will finally see that we were right, although there'll be some change and some justice from that, only we can change the mind. Only we can see that reverberation in our heart, and only we can let it go. And so the Buddha said that we should be a little bit like the earth. The earth is vast and broad, and people piss all over the earth, they shit all over the earth, they walk all over the earth, and yet the earth is so forgiving. And even you see now with all the pollution and all the problems of global warming and climate change, the earth just keeps on going. You see, even with human settlement, you see gardens and animals flourishing. You see plants growing out of drain pipes. The earth is able to accommodate all of this horrible activity and sometimes thrive. So the Buddha said, be like the earth. Just allow these things to wash over you and have some faith, some confidence that you'll be able to bounce back. You'll be able to restore. That there'll be some growth and renewal that will come. There'll be some little saplings growing through the cracks. There'll be some flowers that will grow. But by holding on to resentment and grudge, we'll continue to suffer. And so this practice of letting go is a practice of forgiveness. And the capacity to forgive is large, vast, just like that mind state that I described before. The illusion that we have is that we can't develop that forgiveness, we can't develop that big mind, that we can't let go. Firstly, we need to want to let go, and then we need to practice that. We'll need to let go of some things over and over and over and over again. We'll need to forgive over and over again. But wanting to forgive, wanting to let go, having that intention is the first point. That is a good intention to have, And even just deciding, okay, I'm going to let go, okay, I'm going to forgive. Even this is an amazing shift in your mind. Inclines you towards something more positive, more wholesome. Takes you away from those mind states of resentment, grudge, irritation, ill will. Takes you already towards something more positive. And then practicing in this way, trying over and over again to forgive, over and over again to let go. This will eventually lead to some more peace in the heart. Those problems, those memories will not linger so strongly in the mind. They will not obsess the mind, disturb your peace so much. They won't be so sticky. They won't get stuck in your mind so frequently. They won't lodge in your heart so deeply. And this mind of forgiveness will grow and grow and grow and become so beautiful, so vast, that anything that anyone does to you or to others can become something which can be forgiven. And again, the reason for that is not for the other person. The reason for that is mostly for yourself, so that your mind remains unperturbed, untroubled. But also a mind like that displayed to another person is so transformative, so powerful. To show that love to another being, so kind. And this is the kind of mind that I imagine people like the Buddha had. People cause so many troubles for the Buddha. Someone like Jesus, people trying to kill him, put him up on the cross, and he forgives them. What a mind, And we can be so petty, small-minded. You hear sometimes so many people come to me with stories of woe, stories of family conflict or drama. And when it comes down to it, some of these things can be so small and so petty, but they've just become stuck. And the grudge, the resentment, has become so big and so thick and so powerful that it's very hard for that crack to appear, to let the forgiveness in. But I'll never forget reading about a woman whose son was killed by a gang member, very young son, teenager, very young gang member, still in high school. And this son was killed, shot. And the mother forgave this man, this boy. And she didn't just forgive, but she went there every week, visiting him, asking what she could do for him, making sure he had access to education materials, textbooks that he was studying, and when he came out, that he was supported and cared for. She helped him. And the reason she did this was because she said she couldn't allow for him to become the kind of person that he would become without showing him what it's like to forgive, showing him how love works, showing how powerful hate is and how even more powerful it is to have love. It would be so easy for her to respond to him with hate. But instead she showed him love. She showed him a bigger picture. And he was able to grow into that forgiveness and became a good person. And the story I'll finish on tonight is a story, one of my favorite Zen stories, about a wayward boy who was a troubled child, caused so many problems for his parents. So they sent him off to the local Zen monastery. And there, this boy expected to get in trouble all the time. He was waiting to get in trouble from the Zen monk. He knew that his parents had said something. He knew that's why he was there. and he was waiting to get into big trouble. But it never happened. Instead, the monk just went about the business. They worked together, they did this, they cleaned that. And then, when it came time to go, the monk asked the boy to help put his shoes on. And so the boy bent down to help the monk put the sandals on. And as he knelt there, he just felt these drops on his head, teardrops. And he looked up and he saw the monk crying. And he knew that the monk was crying because he had so much love for this boy, so much kindness and compassion in his heart, so worried about this boy causing troubles for himself, his family, for hurting others. But instead of responding with brutal, vindictive or punishing force, he showed love and showed compassion. And this was able to melt the heart of that young boy, bring him to his senses. And love has always been a stronger way to help others become better people. Compassion has always been the way to help understand why people do what they do. And forgiveness has always been that way to let go of the suffering in your own mind. And so this is a little short talk about grudge, resentment, irritation, ill will, and letting go, and having a mind of love, compassion, and kindness. And I offer this to you for the big problems of the world and for the big problems in our world, and I hope that it may be of some benefit to you.